But our brains are constantly changing, constantly evolving. That's what allows us to learn. It's what allows our brains to adapt, to heal. And for me, what that really means is that we're capable of learning, adapting, and evolving, right? As long as we're giving our brains exactly what they need.
And we're really hoping you can help out Clinton and his mental health and his cognitive health, So that's my biggest, I'll be honest, that's my biggest hope for today. Besides,
that's funny. I was going to use that joke on you.
Dude, come on. I'm the brains of the operation and the beauty, actually.
That, ladies and gentlemen, was the voice of a god, Dr. Suraj Saggar. I am Dr. Clinton Coleman. Welcome to Recommended Daily Dose. If you're listening or watching, please remember to rate, subscribe, and review. We are privileged to have our guest, Dr. Philippe Douyon. He is a board-certified neurologist, but more importantly, he is the founder and CEO of the health, wellness, and technology company, the Inle BrainFit Institute. The link will be below. That institute and company was created to improve people's health and quality of life. We have him today to talk about his new program. It's called Take Charge of Your Brain in 30 Days, which I think Suraj may need a little longer. You have an extended program for him, I hope, right?
Yeah, I'm looking more for a long-term kind of situation. So
he's going to tell us about his program, which helps people with medical, mental, and neurologic disorders get healthier and create the lives they want for themselves. Welcome, Dr. Douyon.
Thank you for having me. I mean, I love the voice of God intro. But you can't be saying that to people with neurological and mental health issues.
Right. Because they actually will hear the voice of God. Yeah.
Because they might actually believe it. Before you start getting into what you're doing now, I would love to hear just a little background of how you got to this point, like how you started out kind of more traditional clinical medicine and then went into your own kind of specialized niche.
Yeah, so I'm a neurologist and epilepsy specialist, and I was part of a big epilepsy group.
Right.
For about
epilepsy
5 years.
is what though for our
seizure disorders.
Got it. Okay.
So seeing people with seizures and other neurological issues, and really one day looked at my older colleague and was like, "Man, is that going to be my life when I am 55?"
Right.
I was like, I need to make some changes. And just
so what specifically? Because I know this is something a lot of doctors, right? I mean, we're going to talk about a lot of different things, but I think a lot of doctors look for side gigs, look for, there's idea of burnout. Some people are looking to get out of clinical medicine, alternate careers, et cetera. So what was it about what you saw in your older colleague or what have you that kind of made you think, man, I can't be this person in 15 years, 20 years?
Yeah, my time was being controlled by whether it was hospital administrators,
right,
secretaries in my practice. So I didn't have that kind of control. I was taking call all the time.
I hear that.
And they're telling you got to see patients in 15, 20, 30 minutes. And I was like, but man, I could influence a lot more lives if I did it differently. Right. So that really pushed me to just start thinking about it in a completely different way.
So it's the whole idea of thinking outside the box, which I think a lot of docs are looking at these days as the practice of medicine changes, right? Clinton and I talk about it all the time. We're constrained by insurance, by time. It's almost like it's like a factory, right? 15-minute blocks of patients, and it's not as satisfying as perhaps it was in different generations. So definitely applaud you for kind of finding your own way.
Yeah, and then the patients that take the longest, that take like an hour to see in your office, that are the most challenging, somehow the insurance companies only pay you like $15.
Right. So tell us what led you on this journey and how you started this new endeavor with your program.
Yeah, so for me, what I felt made me a really good doctor wasn't that I knew what medications to prescribe people, but it was I really connected well with patients because I've been a patient my entire life. I've been a patient since I was 18 years old. I was diagnosed with kidney disease, had a kidney transplant at 8 days after graduating from medical school. And so that's what really made me a good doctor. I just knew what it felt like to have to face your mortality, to have to take medications and have side effects. And I knew what it meant to have to kind of continue to live my dreams despite what my diagnosis was, right? And to adapt when you need to. And so I wanted to take that experience and really share it with people, right? Because a lot of diseases you're not going to be able to cure, but you still have to be able to create the life that you want and live the life that you've always dreamt for yourself.
Also, the constraints of a medical practice sometimes isn't conducive. A 15-minute appointment isn't conducive to a lot of these issues. Tell us about your program. That I'm assuming that kind of addresses those constraints.
Yeah, so the reality is that the research shows that the vast majority of Americans are healthcare illiterate, which means that they don't understand disease, they don't understand the jargon that we use, they don't understand how to resolve issues. And so you're not going to increase their literacy in that 15-20-minute time span. You've got to meet people where they're at. And when they come see you in the office, there's a whole bunch of emotions that are running through them, right? They're scared. Yeah. They're dealing with somebody in a white coat. They're dealing with somebody who's about to tell them potentially some bad news. And so
I'm like, I talked to you for 15 minutes, 30 minutes. I gave you like the rundown, and then 5 minutes later you asked me what I said. So it's like that retention is we take that for granted, right? Sorry, continue.
Yeah, and you can't even blame them for not remembering. It's the way that everything is set up, right? And we've all had those patients who, you're taking their history. They've had abdominal surgery. They can't even tell you why. They just let somebody cut them open and they have no idea. And so this is really about sort of meeting people where they're at, teaching them about different diseases, but also teaching them how they can create the life that they want for themselves, despite whatever challenges that they're facing in life.
So if I understand correctly, this is almost like a concierge neurology practice. Is that correct? I mean, that's kind of the buzzword these days, for primary care concierge or direct primary care. But, this is almost a model that, if I understand this fully, is that you're taking towards more mental and neurological well-being.
Yeah, this is more like health and life coaching combined into one. So I'm not prescribing medications.
You're not? Okay.
I'm teaching you about how to have a mission, vision, and purpose for your life, and why that's important for the evolution of your brain and the role that your brain plays in that. I'm teaching you about how everyday things influence your overall health and how things influence the evolution of your brain. And then I'm teaching you how to create your own sort of prescription plan by developing your mind, your body, as well as your spirit.
And I know one thing you mentioned and that you talked about, and I find very fascinating, is this idea of neuroplasticity, right? So if you could explain that in a general theme to the people listening out there, and then also kind of expand about what that is, and then not only that, what it is, but how you can use that concept and people, like including us, especially Clinton, who I think has some room to grow and learn. How can we use this idea and this idea of neuroplasticity to improve our lives, improve our function?
Yeah, so we used to think that the brain was pretty static. The only time it would change is if you got some kind of brain injury or some degenerative disease like Alzheimer's or some dementia. But our brains are constantly changing, constantly evolving. That's what allows us to learn. It's what allows our brains to adapt, to heal. And for me, what that really means is that we're capable of learning, adapting, and evolving, right? As long as we're giving our brains exactly what they need. And so I tell people all the time, being creatures of habit is killing our neurological potential. Like, I'm a big believer that you need to reinvent yourself every few years.
Right.
So like we started off saying that, I looked to my older colleague and I was like, that can't be my life in 5 or 10 years. Because I knew that I was almost done growing in that practice.
Right.
I wasn't learning anything new.
Right.
I wasn't challenging myself in any way.
Or offering patients anything different. Right.
No. Right. It was going to be Lamictal, Vimpat, Keppra.
Yeah. So do you think your focus with your program is either a replacement for like traditional neurology or psychiatry, or like a complement? Like, how would patients go about like using your program?
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely a complement too. I think so. I've always been a big believer that when possible, if you're going to prescribe somebody medication, it's really to try to get them over a hump while you put in a much more comprehensive lifestyle plan, right?
Right.
And so my program allows that to take place. And my program, like I said, it's just a really good complement. And I think it empowers people a little bit more because traditional medicine tends to be a really passive thing for patients.
Right.
It's like you come see us, we'll give you a medication, or we'll take you to surgery. And this is like you come see us, but we're going to tell you what you can be doing every day to change your life.
Now, you know what, since we're talking about your program, maybe you can give us an example. Let's just say, for example, as a nephrologist who we may or may not know, who's been a bit stressed out due to COVID-19. He's working very hard in his practice.
Kicking my ass, man.
He even may be my co-host, right? So, but, walk us through. Dr. Coleman comes into your office. I'm burnout. My podcast partner has really eclipsed me, medically and socially and everything else. And I need to grow and catch up with him.
You can't spell eclipse.
Kidding aside, this has been even for serious, and we can be serious even for 2 minutes, maybe a minute and a half. We're both stressed out. COVID has really taken a hit on both of us. So let's say a physician comes to you. What gives just something, just general theme, not the whole program?
Yeah, and I think it's really about getting back to what that person wants their life to look like, right?
Okay.
And one of the things that I feel like we stopped doing as adults is we stopped having dreams for ourselves. It's like you get to a certain place and you stop dreaming about what your potential can be. And it becomes about setting new goals, having a new purpose in life. Look, we know that people who are 90 and have a reason to get up in the morning do better than people who are 40 and have no reason to get up. So we've got to give you a new reason to get up, right? We've got to give you a new purpose in life. And then we got to show you how you can work your way to getting there. And it may be, look, I can't be going into the hospital every single day anymore. All right, well, what do you want to do now? Right? What do you want that to look like? And let's start taking the steps to get you there.
It seems almost to me like it's the whole idea, the adage of never stop learning, right? I'm actually, and I think Clinton will chime in and further the question, but, as a physician, med school, undergrad, then med school, neurology, I'm assuming you did an epilepsy fellowship. So we're constantly thinking the next board, next thing to learn. But then you hit a wall where you said, what do I do now? Now I'm going to do this for the next 35 years, right? And a lot of people might say, well, look, you work hard your entire 20s. Now just work. But I think what you're saying is that, no, you can't stop learning, right? I mean, you have to keep growing, which I think you're absolutely right. A lot of physicians do get into a rut of just, rinse, wash, repeat, see patients, deal with paperwork and do the same thing. So I find it very fascinating that you as a physician, who most people probably think that we're constantly learning and are happy to take a break, are saying, no, I need to keep growing as a person. Yeah,
you've got to keep growing as a person. I saw somebody a couple of years ago who is a memory expert. He spent 50 years of his life studying memory, right? I attended one of his lectures. I couldn't even understand what he was saying as a neurologist. And I was like, I'm not even sure he understands what he's saying. And then he came to see me in the office because he was having memory issues. Because the moment that he retired, he could no longer compensate for the fact that he hadn't developed himself in any other way. He hadn't, learned anything new. And it's really important that we sort of step out of our comfort zone. We learn brand new skills, whether it's new languages, new hobbies, new instruments. We take on different career paths. We've got to develop ourselves.
I think the key point is probably challenging yourself, right? So, and I think we all dealing with this now as far as the pandemic. We're all challenged physically and mentally. How has that changed how your program is geared towards patients? Like, I think everyone's stressed. I think, the brain has a pretty good knack for dealing with stress, but unfortunately, us as providers are limited in providing that help.
Right. So the brain is built for short-term stress, but it's not built for long-term stress.
Right.
And so once you start going into chronic stress, you're going to start having memory issues, problems with focus and concentration, things like depression sets in. And so you've got to find really healthy ways of relieving that stress. And I think one of the things that physicians are really struggling with right now is how disempowered they are, right? Because it's kind of like you're in a pandemic. Oh, no. You still got to go to work, into the hospital, regardless if there are PPEs there for you. It's like, what kind of nonsense is that, right? And so I think finding ways to empower people, whether they're physicians, patients, or whoever, that's so incredibly important.
Can you give us a small idea of something that we could do, not we as physicians, but patients dealing with the stress of isolation, not being able to go out,
Mhm.
see your loved ones, having to work at home, eating all day. Is there something
Yeah.
like, you get the magic pill or something that you can
Like I'm
help
used
us
to
with?
kicking it with Coleman, kicking at his house, and I'm really suffering.
Kicking
Not
it.
able to work out.
What are you,
So
Tribe Called
First of all,
Quest?
look,
you got my reference. I love it. All right, there you go.
you got to get your body moving. So you want to be exercising. This is
Right.
actually
Right.
a really great time to learn a new hobby or skill. You
Yeah.
come out of this pandemic and you're like, all of a sudden I know how to play guitar.
Right.
It's like
Right.
you took that time, that year or who knows, year and a half, 2 years, and developed a completely new skill. You're going to be really proud of yourself, right? Or you learned a brand new language. You're going to be really proud of yourself. This is a great time to turn yourself into the person you've always wanted to be. Because what will happen in about 3 years is people are going to be so stressed out, so overworked that they're going to be like, damn, that COVID time, that wasn't so bad when I had all that time to myself at home.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I have a friend of mine, very close friend of mine from college. He works in the financial field. He's working from home. He's a trader, someone who used to work, crazy hours, commute to Manhattan. He now called me and said, "Yo, I just got a pilot license. I'm flying." Which is amazing that he decided to take this time and do something positive. How about something on a smaller scale? Because, as we say, there's a disconnect with COVID. And so as an infectious disease doctor, a lot of ER docs, they'll say, hey, we don't have any free time. We're working nonstop. But I suspect you're going to say, no, there's still time, and you have to find time, even if we may not have the free time that perhaps other fields may have. But what's something even on a smaller scale? I would love to learn a new language. I would love to, be able to learn how to dunk and slam over Clinton. But, something small. What's a small everyday thing I could do, or
You could,
anyone could do for that matter, to just kind of develop that brain?
you could dress
Work,
nicer maybe, or learn
Yeah,
style.
work.
perhaps you haven't seen the screen. Let's continue.
Stand up.
You can work on your beach body. Summer will come back. You can meditate 10, 15
Sure.
minutes per day. That has shown to change the structure of your brain,
Right.
right? So there are a lot of little things that you can do.
Yeah, and when you say change the structure, does that change as we get older, or is there a chance to basically make new neuronal connections? I think that's what the idea of neuroplasticity is, right? You're developing different connections in the brain. Is that something you can do throughout your life?
Yeah, so in my book, Neuroplasticity, Your Brain Superpower, so I describe how, look, throughout your entire life, as long as you're giving your brain what it needs, you've got the ability of making new neurons and new connections, which means that you are capable of evolving your entire life, right? You don't have to become demented or develop Alzheimer's. I think that's
Right.
one of the biggest myths, is that you're not in control of your neurological evolution. Everything that you do every single day influences how your brain is going to evolve.
Is that a new way of thinking, or because I think if you think about it, the brain controls everything in your body to
Mhm.
to a more or less extent. The concept of the brain healing itself or the rest of your body, is that something that like doctors and patients can use?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's something that everybody can use. And one of the things that I say to people is the fact that you are aware of your thoughts suggests that
Right.
there's a much higher level of consciousness. You are not your brain.
Right.
So you can't let your brain use you, because if it does, it's going to take you down a dark, deep cycle of negativity. And so you have to take charge of your brain, right? You get to teach your brain what you want it to learn. You get to teach it new skills. You get to, show it what it is that you want it to do.
Now you mentioned your book. Tell us a little bit more about that. I wasn't actually. I knew about the program, but you said a book as well. How did that come about?
Yeah, so I wrote that book around 2017, 2018, and it came out 2019. I guess it was when I was plotting my escape from private practice. An app, a game, and the book. Those were
Right.
my tickets out. And it was, again, to really help people. I was inspired by the patients that I was seeing. How they were just kind of, regardless of what neurological issues they had, they were still able to create the life that they wanted for themselves. So I wanted to share that message with other people.
No, it's excellent. Now, you mentioned before we started that this is all done virtually. So tell us a little bit about where people can find you, both on social media as well as through your website, etc.
Yeah, so social media wise, they can find me on Instagram. My handle is Philippe.md, so PHILIPPE.md. They can find me on Facebook at Philippe Douyon MD or LinkedIn Philippe Douyon MD. They can go to my website, which is Inle BrainFitInstitute.com, or they can email me at philippedouyon@gmail.com.
People can reach out to you and ask questions. I'm assuming you'll reach out to them.
Absolutely. I always love answering questions, and
Good.
they can find my book on Amazon and get to my course on through my website.
I practice the old adage that laughter is the best medicine, but I agree with you, the brain health, and we definitely learned something today, and I find it fascinating, this whole idea of neuroplasticity. So thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for all listeners for listening and watching. Please find us at our new website, rxdailydose.com, that my friend Dr. Clenton Coleman, who is the only podcast host who usually wears church clothes, right? So does, but not today, I guess. Find us on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher. Watch, subscribe at youtube.com, Doc Nation Media. Please rate and review and subscribe. Thank you so much for coming on, Dr. Suraj. As always, Dr. Clinton Coleman. Until next time, be well.